All right, I'm going to start off by saying I love Miss Peaches. She is a wonderful person. However, there are a lot of issues that we had. uh, Fuck, my head feels like it's going to explode. Um, when I moved out of my shop out on 75th and Arapahoe, moved everything to storage. Brandon Ratner and uh, his girlfriend at the time, Veronica Randall, helped me to move, along with a few other people that I grossly overpaid because one of them was definitely more interested in going to get meth than he was in actually doing any work, and that's when I hurt my back. Um, when I moved out of there, it was Miss Peaches who helped, and also the Clang family, Dee Dee Clang and Rodney Clang and Rachel Clang. These people I knew from, they used to feed the homeless with Pastor Benny, who he didn't call me back today, which is fine. Um, Miss Peaches and I have had a long history together. I've known her for a long time. I did find out from her mom that Miss Peaches was never actually homeless. But that's neither here or there. Um, so let's fast forward a bit. Uh, Miss Natalie rescued me from the Boulder police and their nonstop fucking harassment. And Maddie Boa came to visit me almost every day for about 2 weeks. Um, Miss Natalie was telling me that she was having problems with her boyfriend at the time, and they broke up. And he stole her dog, and it was a very fucked up issue. He had held her down and was screaming in her face, and it was very messed up. She had tried to help me to get a job in Denver, saving the bees. After Virginia, um, I was I was having a lot of issues. I mean, I was finally able to get into housing thanks to Aunt B going in with me. That's Brenda Dickinson. Um, but I was literally, I had left Virginia. Police had busted my vehicle further. Um, Laura Nelson can verify, Laura and David Nelson can verify that the steering column issue that I was having was pre existing. And Ken Wilson can verify that that issue continued to exist even after Virginia. But anyway, the term stalker, um, those of you who have seen the messages between Natalie and I, you know that I didn't stalk her. She was just as excited about me being there as I was. But then again, she also had family, and she was also worried about her family's opinions. Rightly so. They had they had pushed her to the point of suicide repeatedly. Um, so when I left there, I was done with them. Fucking train. Well, I got to Boulder, and on the way to leave Virginia, I'd gotten hold of Maddie Bowe to let her know what was going on, and she said that I had threatened Natalie and her family. Alicia had said so. And that was pretty fucked up. I mean, already the rumors were spreading and definitely not true. Uh, I had a panic attack when I was severely dehydrated. I mean, that's a lot different than and especially with my vehicle stuck in the fucking road like it was. I mean, that's a far cry from threatening someone. It really is. So I got back to Boulder, and I was excited to be back in Boulder. I mean, I had a running vehicle this time. I didn't have to carry around my backpack. It was a good thing. It didn't take very long before meth heads were coming out of the woodwork and being assholes. And there was a few scenarios that had happened there. So by December, I had gone to see Miss Peaches to try to get help, and there's a guy named Joshua Bear who was there. He's kind of an asshole. Doesn't really give a fuck what anybody else has to say. His opinion is set in stone, and he's going to voice it even if it's not his goddamn business and he doesn't know what the fuck is going on. Now, with my sensory overload issues, I had to have a one-on-one conversation also because of the nature of the situation. It wasn't something that you really want to talk about in front of the kids. Um, so, Hey Bear was fucking. Me and Miss Peaches started our conversation. We got about 5 or 10 minutes in, and she'd been drinking, but at least she was listening. And then A Bear got up and he started his bullshit, and then I have to deal with Miss Peaches starting to act like A Bear. I'm like, I can't handle this. I'm overwhelmed. There's two of them, and I need a one-on-one conversation with Miss Peaches. Well, I'd also been panhandling, flying a sign to make sure that there was food in the house, and I was there for about a week. Um, we played Magic the Gathering. It was pretty cool. But A Bear, he's got this superiority thing where he thinks he's superior to everybody, and talking shit is something that he really prides himself on. And really, I didn't need somebody to talk shit. I needed somebody to understand. When we were playing Magic the Gathering, we should have just been able to have a friendly game and enjoy it. But A Bear made it so that it was unfun for everyone. Well, um, I finally left. I'm like, fuck this. I'm not going to deal with A Bear. I will. I love him. Don't get me wrong, but I need actual help. Um, so I left and I came here to Chapel, Nebraska, and went to my housing, and it was a fucking pain in the ass. um, on January or in January of 2017, this is a few months after the whole Virginia trip. Um, I mean, I'm having a lot of problems. I really don't have anyone to talk to. I can't go over to see Aunt B without having to worry about Uncle D being an asshole about every goddamn thing. And really, Aunt B should have spoke up and told him what was up. She's very Christian, or claims to be, but if you're really that Christian, you need to not keep secrets from your husband. Like if you got somebody coming over to your house and working all day, you really need to be honest about that with your husband. Um, Matter of fact, I was at Brenda Dickinson's house when I had gotten that call from Miss Natalie saying that she was suicidal. So, I mean, there's something to put in perspective for you. And B knows quite a bit about the situation, and she does need to come forward about it. Um, anyway, I was taking a Scotts Bluff or not Scotts Bluff, Sydney, Nebraska on a suicide watch. And it was it was weird. Um, One of the officers here, his name, I didn't know until uh, my grandma's funeral well over a year later. But um, I'd spoken with Miss Peaches. Well, we texted. She was very standoffish, typing pretty words. I'm like, I need you to stop telling me pretty words. I need you to actually listen to what's going on. During that period of time, I'd also gone to a couple of other people for help. Um, there was a guy named Pierre who uh, actually, Pierre would have been later, I guess, because I was living at Ken and Lee's by that time. So I was able to get hooked up with Region 1 Nebraska and Tamara and Nicole Peralta as a result of the trip to Sydney. And they were going to help me. Um, I was talking to Nicole Peralta about the whole autism situation and how I was supposed to be diagnosed with Asperger's, and also that I was pretty sure it was PTSD from the shit that I grew up in the system. And so Nicole and Tamara helped me to get disability. And I got disability, and it was enough to pay for my low income. And um, I just didn't have anyone here to hang out with or to talk to except for my drunk neighbor, Susie. Um, Going down to Nettie's Treasures to see Laura. It was, well, sometimes it was positive, but a lot of times it's just small towns crush you, especially if you're not rich, especially if you don't fit a specific mold of pretty. Um, and of course, there was Aunt B with her rheumatoid arthritis medications. And ultimately, I ended up uh, in March of 2017. By this time, I had been posting on my Facebook the situation that happened in Virginia. I was trying to explain to people, hey, it's not some sort of fucking creeper thing. It was just a series of fucked up events. It wasn't like I was, hey, you better come out here and be my girlfriend, or I'm gonna cut off the heads of all of your children and all of your aunts and your uncles and everybody. Like, no, it was me stuck in a fucking road, honking my horn because I didn't want to get fucking plowed into by a vehicle, you know. So I moved to Ken and Leah's, and basically Ken wanted somebody there because Leah, when she's by herself, she's pretty fucking depressed and wigs the fuck out. And I was having issues like that myself. And he thought that if I was there, that me and Leah would have a lot in common, and we really don't. She was a stripper. She has been a sex worker. Um, she was a cheerleader, and she's very in love with herself. There isn't much in common between me and her, except we both experienced a bit of tragedy in our lifetimes. She lost her daughter to a driver in a pickup truck ran her daughter over, and Ken was pretty sad about that too. His kids ended up going to New Jersey to live with their mother, because they had to step over the stain where their sister died on their way to school, and it really fucked him up in the head. Meanwhile, Ken's ex, who they went to live with, is a meth addict, so he's really having issues with that. Well, I couldn't talk to Ken and Leah about the situation. I had tried, and they just wanted to tell me pretty words, and I didn't really get far. So I went to Miss Peaches, and the situation there was uh, different. Um, A Bear was dating Raja's ex. Raja is Peach's baby daddy, and she was gonna have a conversation with me about it to see what she could do to help. And I didn't get to explain the situation because her kids were there, and she had to do all the running around that mommies have to do. And then the situation was that as soon as the kids went to bed, which is what we were waiting on, her and Raja played Diablo 3. I was there for 4 days, and I was spending my disability money to make sure there was food in the house. And I was still paying for the place in Nebraska, and it was basically just storage for my tools. Ken and Leah's, I spent a bit of time working on a room for them so that it could be an art room. It used to be the kids' room, and I turned their bunk bed and all that into a work table and stuff like that for them. But Leah's never satisfied. She always wants more. Uh, so I was really having an issue with living with Ken and Leah. Um, I needed Ken to help with the projects that I was doing without Leah being a side seat driver, because she doesn't know what the fuck is going on. And it's very much making every project take 10 times longer than it should. So I got a hold of Miss Peaches, and she was still doing that whole snappy thing, but she agreed to have me over, and she was going to talk with me about my situation. And I went over there to talk to her, and this time she had to run and get weed for Dawn. Um, Not Dawn Bird, a different Dawn. But by this point, Dawn Bird was living there, and at Ken and Leah's, and Blaine McCrelius, Dawn's ex, was coming over quite often, and Dawn always bitched about him. What a terrible POS he was, about how he's a fucking fucked up dealer and so on and so forth. And so I went over to see Miss Peaches, and her upstairs neighbor, he's a guy named Don. And Don was waiting on his weed, and Miss Peaches was going to get it. Now, mind you, this is in Colorado, and marijuana is legal, even recreational. So I was pitching cigarettes and stuff like that, making sure that I contributed to the household, and I always made sure that I brought food. Um, but again, at the end of the night, she ended up playing video games with Raj, and that time I think it was Minecraft. So then we fast forward a bit. Ken and Leah stole my money. I moved out of the place in Chapel, Nebraska, up on Hilltop, and that was a big fucking mistake. Um, but I wanted to be closer to my loved ones and closer to my friends, and so I moved in full time at Ken and Leah's, and we'd had kind of a honeymoon period there, which is why I decided to move there instead of moving everything out of Ken and Leah's. But I didn't want to pay two rents. And this house that I'm in now used to be owned by a woman named Megan Christie, and she was a meth addict. Well, she wanted to sell the house, and Brenda Dickinson, who lives across the street, was encouraging me to try to buy it. Um, I was going to try to come up with about $7,000 to try to buy the place, and it was between this place here or some property in San Juan County, Colorado. Um, Basically, I needed a place where there's a lot of people that need help. They need to be able to get out of their current situations. Like Natalie needed to be able to get away from her friends in Colorado because they're all heroin addicts. And so it was just a really fucked up situation. And Miss Peaches hadn't been able to make time. And finally, she was, when I was trying to get a lawyer, and Jeff Ritter was supposed to be helping, and he was just not useful. He said, you know what, you have to have paperwork, and then we can help hook you up with a lawyer. And I was like, all right, well, I got to do something. I mean, I'm dealing with issues with Ken and Leah, and I'm dealing with issues of being assaulted when I go to Boulder. I had a situation with Amy and Andrew Witcher where Andrew was all fucked up on meth, and they were thinking that some meth head was living in their crawl space. Like, no, it's Andrew, obviously. So in December, after I had left, uh, or November, after, It would have been September, I believe, when I left um, uh, Jamie Curtis's house. That would have been when I stomped on that phone and fucked up my foot and saved the owl and all that. No, the saving the owl was before the Virginia trip. But when I broke the phone, I mean, I fucked up my foot in the process. And I couldn't get people to stop harassing me and threatening me. People like Tim Beeson, who had been harassing me since March of 2017. The first message he ever sent me was some bullshit about me being a chimo and a druggie and some other fucking bullshit. I'm like, I don't need this, all right? And I would have liked to show Natalie what was going on. I got a hold of her to let her know what was going on, and she blocked me and basically treated me like shit. And so had Maddie Boa, and so had Alicia Bollinger. And by this time, I had already gone to talk to Pierre, who said that he would show up, and he just never did. And I was fucking, hey, guys, knock it off. Just having issues with it. So finally, I got fucking desperate. I'm like, all right, she's threatened to call the cops on me, and I fucking told her to give them my number. Just call off the fucking dogs. I mean, these guys are fucking harassing me for shit that I didn't do. But I didn't know how to take screenshots at the time. Now, I've already showed y'all here on YouTube that, yeah, fucking Tim Beast was sending that shit. I also was showing it on Facebook. Um, but the whole problem was that she didn't believe me. I didn't know how to take screenshots, and I needed to force a day in court. I thought she was in Virginia, and I'm pissed off because I'm getting this whole, sorry, it's out of my jurisdiction, out of my jurisdiction, out of my jurisdiction. Like, whose fucking jurisdiction is it? Seriously. So on the 9th of December, I got a hold of Natalie's mother. Um, this is after I had made the Michelle Brannick profile, and used that to try to get Natalie and Alicia and Maddie to fucking call off the dogs. And they wouldn't fucking do it. I mean, Maddie, she already knew that I didn't fucking do it, you know, but what she's typing to me is, I'm like, you're fucking spreading rumors to your friends that they're doing, that I fucking did fucked up shit in Virginia. And she's like, no, I didn't do that. It's not my fault they see it the way I saw it. I'm like, you didn't see anything. Natalie never said that I did anything like that. Alicia never said anything that I did anything like that. I mean, this is some fucked up crackhead bullshit that I'm dealing with. I need it to fucking stop. So on the 9th of December, I got a hold of Natalie's mother to let her know about the shit that I was dealing with and ask her to put a stop to it, to help me out. And she never replied. So on the 12th, I took that email that Natalie had sent me in 2016 about her dad, and I posted it on my timeline, and I posted it on his. And next morning, Natalie calls me and tells me that I fucked things up way worse with her family. And yeah, she fucked things up pretty bad with my family too. It was a fucked up situation. Where's my plug-in? I probably left it upstairs, the plug-in for the computer. So then on the 15th, Natalie got a hold of me to say that she wanted to meet me at Starbucks on Pearl Street. I don't feel comfortable at Starbucks on Pearl Street, so I let her know that I'd rather meet at the police station. But we agreed to meet at the Starbucks on University and Broadway. So I went to University and Broadway. Now, in order to get there, I had to walk over 100 blocks and spend the last of my money to get on a bus to go to Miss Peaches, who had agreed that if I was there by 9 a.m., that she would give me a ride to Boulder so that I'd get that taken care of. I'd have gotten a hold of a woman named Chelsea Worsing, and Chelsea Worsing was going to try to make it so that she could be there for my safety, a witness, literally. Um, but I was able to make it. I actually posted along the way, what was going on and that I was going on that trip and so on and so forth. Uh, Ken and Leah hadn't paid me my money back from my disability money that they had spent. They were supposed to pay me back on the 8th of December. I was really fucking stressed out, and I was able to make it to Peaches in time, and she gave me a ride to Boulder, and I was pretty fucking excited. I'm like, yes, I'm finally gonna get a fucking end to this bullshit. And I figured there was a chance that it was Natalie, and there was a chance that it was one of her fucking crackhead buddies, and there was a chance it was going to be the police. In either event, I just wanted that shit to stop so I could go to Boulder and see my loved ones without having to worry about being threatened, harassed, and assaulted. Because if I'm assaulted and I try to tell on the person, more often than not, I'm going to be the one who's in trouble because I'm the one who's homeless, and there's the term mentally ill. Now, she had already made that her final public post by that time where she slandered the fuck out of me. And yeah, I was fucking pissed. And then I was locked out of the Michelle Brannick profile, which sucked because I needed to be able to fucking show that stuff. I had taken my computer down there to Boulder to try to show Natalie, and I got a protection order instead. I didn't even look at it. At that point, I was just glad that it was paperwork. I just had to wait until after Christmas because I had to wait until Jeff Ritter was back at work. Um, well, I should have read that protection order. That's my fault. I just assumed that when you're given a protection order that it's permanent, and I was pissed off that I didn't get a day in court, especially since nobody was threatening her. I mean, I just wanted to blow my head off in front of her. I was having my life threatened, having my friends and family's life threatened, being assaulted in multiple locations. I mean, it's just a really fucked up scenario. So then I was able to go back to Ken and Leah's, and I had like $2.50 left on my Starbucks card, and that's what I had to fucking work with. Well, it turns out that I was supposed to have court on the 22nd of December, and I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't have a way to take screenshots. I mean, that's literally why I took my computer and all that other stuff with me to go see Natalie, to show her what's going on, to show her at least the internet harassment, because I can't show her the shit I'm dealing with in real life. It's not like hey, hold on a second, stop assaulting me long enough for me to pull out my phone and fucking, I want you to re-say what it is that you were just screaming at me. Like, yeah, no, that's not how it fucking works. It would be great if that's how it fucking worked, but if it worked like that, I could just be like, hey, you just knock it off? I mean, in that type of scenario where the world is magic like that, and people who are irate and assholes are magically going to do what I ask them to, yeah, that I'd just ask them to leave me the fuck alone. Which, by the way, I was trying. Um, so on the 26th of December, um, well, mind you, my disability money, the court date that I missed was on the 22nd. I didn't even know I had court. I just assumed that the protection order was permanent and I needed to fight it and I needed to get Natalie in court to fucking say on record that I did not rape or molest or fucking stalk her. It was just, she was fucked up on drugs. Now, during this period of time, Ken and Leah are spending my money and smoking a shit ton of weed, and I'm pretty well fucking broke, and I really needed to be able to use that money to move back to Chapel, which was going to take a few months because I needed to go through all of those motions again. So I had been making sure that I paid up Ken and Leah in advance. I had ended up paying them about $600 because rent there was $200 a month. Uh, And every month I planned on giving them the $75 that was for utilities, um, and that I would eventually, hopefully within 5 months, have the money to either buy the house that I'm currently in, um, which is somebody else's now, by the way, um, or I would be able to get that property in San Juan. Um, just a fucked up scenario. So Ken and Leah on the 26th, um, I was like, hey, Ken, you know what? I really need that money back. You were supposed to pay me back on the 8th of December, and you just didn't. I mean, that money has been, I've been waiting on it. It was supposed to be for stuff that's supposed to help with autism, and that's not what it got spent on. You guys spent it on fucking drugs, and I'm pretty pissed off about it. So me and Ken got into a shouting match in the kitchen. It didn't start off as a shouting match. But I was telling him, hey, you know what? You keep hiding behind Leah, and Leah talks about what she's spending my money on. I need you to talk to me. And he was up in my face and fucking very irate, very. I was backed up against the kitchen sink, and I fucking started yelling at him back. I'm like, dude, you need to knock it the fuck off. I'm not here for a fight. It's my money. And then Leah come in the kitchen, and I've got Leah and Ken both screaming at me, and I'm fucking overwhelmed at this point. Then Dawn Bird comes out of her room, and she starts fucking hitting me with her chest, and I just fucking made it to the back door, and she was still hitting me with her chest as I was going out the back door. I'm like, fuck this, I'm the fuck out of here. Um, so I went in the garage and I started packing up my stuff. I got my backpack ready and put a bunch of stuff in it. And I was going to go show Miss Peaches what was going on with Natalie and all of that whole fucking scenario. And I got a hold of her. I was like, hey, this is the situation. You know, I need to take Ken and Leah to court. You know, I don't want to, but they stole all my money, and I really need to fucking be in a safe environment. And she was like, all right, sure, you can come over. You know, her and Raj were really fucking cool about it. And so I finally got there. And at this point in time, I've got about $300 that I got to try to stretch out for the month. And I also want to go see Nicole Peralta, who's my therapist in Nebraska. And that drive is fucking hell. And it just fucking sucked. So I got to Miss Peaches, and she was gonna sit down with me, but she really didn't have the time. She has a problem with her back too, and she had to go have a surgery. So she was gonna sit down with me after surgery, and we were gonna work on that. So that was the second time that I walked almost all the way to Miss Peach's house. I'm gonna go grab an empty tobacco. I'll be right back. I put these cigarette butt. I put it in a aluminum foil pipe so that I have tobacco. Yes, I'm addicted to tobacco. Anyway, so when I got to Miss Peaches, um, they were really cool. Um, she had her surgery, and me and Raj, we were up all night fucking worried sick. I mean, it was a very scary situation. She was having back surgery, and I had already set it up through Colorado Coalition of the Homeless with Kara Heller to see about getting fake teeth, and also to see about getting x-rays on my back and get something done about it. They're freaking out like someone's home. Anyway, so after her surgery, she was pretty doped up still from the surgery, and she was going to help me. I had brought over, chorizo and stuff like that for cooking, and like I always did, bring over food. Um, Guys, so I was getting ready to cook dinner, and we were going to sit down and take care of that after dinner. And meanwhile, I had been in contact with Mandy Singer, whose son was missing, and Shauna Sinclair, her daughter, was missing. So I made posts about both of those folks. Um, and, asked for prayers. That's what they were asking for. And then I got a phone call from a generic number, a police officer asking if I knew where Natalie was, or saying that Natalie was missing. Now, mind you, I'd been fearing a phone call like this ever since the word stalker in Virginia. Anything that happens to her, I'm going to get blamed for. And that's the biggest issue with Ted Bollinger. Ted Bollinger could kill his own daughter. He could kill Danica. He could kill Shelley. He could kill Rose. And I would get blamed for it. That's how it stands today, not back then. But I hit the floor. I mean, I fucking that was devastating. And with her history with people like Cash and a few of her other ex-boyfriends and a bunch of their fucked up scenarios and the drug use and all that, like it was pretty fucking scary. Now, one of the things with the protection order that had pissed me off is that I'd been trying to get one, and police had told me it's out of my jurisdiction, no matter where I was at. But I thought she was in fucking Virginia, you know? And so when I got that protection order in Boulder, I was pissed off. I mean, if she's in fucking Boulder in that jurisdiction, yeah, I don't want to be in fucking Boulder. I'd given her the entire state of Virginia. Shit, if she's in Colorado, she can have that whole fucking state too. And I suppose there's probably going to end up being a part 2 to this story because it's long-winded. Um, so Natalie was missing, and Miss Peaches was, basically telling me, hey, you need to protect yourself. You need to get a lawyer. What if something bad happened to her? We hope that she's just out partying with her friends and didn't call in, and so on and so forth. But I mean, it was a fucking scary situation. I mean, here I've been threatened, harassed, and assaulted over lies from this young woman for over a year, and now she's disappeared, and I'm the bad guy. Well, then I find out that the protection order wasn't permanent, that I could have gone to court on the 22nd, but I didn't get my disability money until the 23rd, the day after, so I couldn't have gone if I wanted to. And I'm, trying to make a post about Natalie missing, try to help find her, like I always do when somebody goes missing. And, like Sarah Rubiolo and Brittany and Hannah Pendergrast, I made a video because back when I was looking for those people, I didn't make a video. I didn't know how. That was a recent development, learning how to do the videos on Facebook. So then Natalie's mom got on and was calling me a stalker on all of them. And pretty soon I've got hundreds of people fucking harassing me and threatening my life because it's all over the goddamn news. And, I went in to talk to the police, and, at first they came over to close to Miss Peach's house. And I took them over to Miss Peach's house. And it freaked Miss Peaches out a bit having police cars there and stuff. But at first I had talked to a detective named Erica, and I believe it might have been Detective Hyatt or Detective Peterson. I don't remember. I remember it was the female detective that I was speaking with. And I was trying to help give them any information that I could to help find her. So then, they left. I got all of my stuff together that I had gotten to go show Natalie what the fuck was going on. I got all that together because, she had a lot of predators in her life, from her dad to Tim Beeson. And so the police came down and they got me, at my request, of course. And they asked Miss Peaches and her family to go down. And of course, we all went in and we got our hands swabbed to make sure there was no gun residue on it, and got our DNA taken and shit like that. And I was explaining to them, hey, I have panic attacks. If you don't talk to me one on one, we're going to have issues. You're not going to get effective communication out of me. But the thing is, I didn't go in with Miss Peaches. They went in a separate vehicle. They went to a separate room. At no point in time while we were there did we have contact. And it also freaked me out that they took me to basically where they go to investigate sexual abuse. So that fucking freaked me out too. Um, that later led me to believe that Natalie was raped, and also the fact that Danica, one of Natalie's stepmothers, said that detectives were waiting on DNA, further increased that belief. Um, I'm sure that had a lot to do with the plea agreement with Joseph Lopez, is that they didn't want her family to have to hear about that. But the thing is that they already knew that Natalie had survived that at home from her own dad. They could handle that shit. So then, I was hoping that Miss Peaches was still there, and I was trying to let the detectives know what was going on. They had taken my phone for a few minutes, but given it back. Um, and I was thinking about my flip phone. My flip phone might have some useful information on it, but I didn't know Ken and Leah's address. And mind you, at this point in time, my head is not working straight. I'm fucking scared shitless for Natalie, and um, I had told Detective Peterson, "Hey, I'll commit felonies to keep Natalie safe." I had tried to offer her all of the money that I had to get her safe, including the $100 the King of Nichols had sent me for um, going to see my therapist in Nebraska, because obviously it wasn't really working out in Colorado. But they said that Miss Peaches was gone already, and I said, well, I got to be able to get a hold of her to make sure that it's all right to stay there, because I mean, after shit like that, you might not be able to. But they were insistent that they were going to drop me off where they picked me up, which was Miss Peaches' house. So they dropped me off at Miss Peaches' apartment, and I knocked on the door, and she said, all right, well, my mom is not okay with you being here now. Um, I'm going to let you stay for the night, but you got to go in the morning. So instead of being able to stop and get what the detectives in Broomfield had asked for, I'm now looking for a place to go temporarily. And the Broomfield officers had asked me specifically to go to Boulder. Um, and when I was leaving there, I was trying to get them to take a look at all the threats and assaults and abuse that I was going through, including the bullshit with Tim Beeson, especially since me showing them what was going on with Tim Beeson and pressing charges against him for the shit that, he was doing, even though fucking nobody was willing to do anything about it before then. I figured if Tim Beeson killed her, that would probably be enough to give them a search warrant. But I was pretty sure at that point that it was Ted Bollinger who had killed her, or that I was afraid that Ted Bollinger had killed her. I didn't know that she was dead. I knew that there was a body, and the way the detectives made it sound, that Natalie was involved with a shooting. Maybe she had killed somebody, or maybe she was with somebody who was killed and had been kidnapped, and they were treating it like a missing persons, and they knew it was Natalie. There's no way they didn't. Her tattoos are too specific. I mean, they knew it was Natalie. But then I got back to Miss Peaches. By then, it was already on the news, and it was the 29th, and uh, um, Natalie's sister Alicia called me up to ask if I knew where she was at. I said no, because I didn't. And then I went to Boulder because Miss Peaches had let me know that her mom wasn't okay with me staying there. And later on, that became a something that, I was like, hey, because I was not able to stay there an extra night, because I wasn't able to get the detectives what they were asking for. I've gone through a lot of hell. Um, and she was all sorts of pissed off about that. Don't blame me, don't blame my mom. I'm like, I'm not blaming you. I'm telling you what the consequences for me were. I went back to Boulder and I had to deal with threats and harassment and assaults, and the police not listening to a thing I was saying. I had to stay with Todd, who was a drug dealer, and he was freaking out, but he was also trying to help me find Joy Moreno, um, because I had heard that he was missing since Natalie disappeared, and that the Joey Moreno that I knew, used to tell people that he's the devil and he was a pretty rotten son of a bitch. And hearing that Natalie was dating him was pretty fucking scary. Turned out it was a different Joey Moreno. Um, Hello.
Hi, Sean. This is Mike with the Autism Society of Nebraska. How are you today?
I'm freaking out a little bit.
Uh-oh.
My
witness here with me too. Her name is Megan.
All right. Hey, Megan.
Hi. What's going on today?
I've been through a few years of hell. I need to get into housing and get an autism advocate, and without an advocate, I haven't been able to get one. I've had panic attacks over a lot of abuse that I've been enduring, and I scared off all my friends.
Yeah. I'm sorry about that.
You didn't do it.
Go ahead.
But I'm high functioning, so I'm not allowed to have panic attacks, and I'm not allowed to have meltdowns. I'm not allowed to have any of the issues that come along with autism because I'm smart and I'm well spoken most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a hard thing for people to understand. You still have needs and you still have things that you're going through, and it's hard for people to understand that.
Yes, ma'am.
So are you so you're looking for housing, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so a couple of the questions that we had was to try to see what we could do to make some calls and figure out how to solve this. So you're in, what town are you in?
I'm in Chapel.
Okay, like you want to stay there?
I do. Well, that's my. I'm sure you guys are aware that the familiarity is important and consistency is important, and this is one of the few places that I have familiarity.
Yeah. So you really want to stay there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Because one of the things we were looking at is, trying to figure out if North Platte was too far away, because they have a few more services, but you shouldn't have to move, and so we'll do our best to try to find resources for you that'll allow you to stay there. Especially if you've got your family there at all, or
no, but I got a lot of loved ones who live here. And like I said, it's familiar to me. I freak out in new places pretty easily.
Yeah. So do you have a diagnosis from a psychologist? Or?
I do. Her name is Nicole Peralta, and she hasn't gotten back to me. I was supposed to be diagnosed when I was a lot younger, but I saw how people are treated when they have the autism tag. Basically, everything they do is wrong and everything they say is wrong. And no matter what, it's assumed that they're wrong. So I fought real hard not to get that. By the time I was 17, it was pretty obvious that I needed to get a diagnosis. But they told me to wait until I was 18 because I would have to get re-diagnosed as an adult anyway in Nebraska. So the problem is when I turned 18, I, I, w- I was dropped off. I was in the system, and I aged out of the system. So I had one shoe and a pair of pants and a shirt and no ID, no birth certificate, no nothing. So I didn't get to do that. I had to go through the whole homeless routine. And I discussed it a few times about getting diagnosed, but I really, like I said, I didn't want to get it treated like an autistic retard, which if you got cerebral palsy, autism, or Down syndrome, people just automatically assume.
Yeah.
Um,
Can I ask how old you are?
I am 39.
Yeah, 'cause a lot of, unfortunately, and I know that's hard, that doesn't help you any, but, 39, you're pretty, um, a lot's changed in the last 10 years, especially for kids under 18. But I'm sure at your age, you saw a lot of that where people didn't really understand it. And we still have a long ways to go, but it's a lot better now than it was 20 years ago, for sure.
Well, for those of us with high function autism, there's a lady named Anna Moomin, and she really does put a lot of stuff in perspective extremely well. She's from the UK.
Okay. One thing I should tell you too is we have a 21-year-old son on the spectrum who's also very high functioning. So he was diagnosed at 18 months old. So we've been around in the autism community a long time as parents. And then we also became advocates after a few years, when things got a little bit controlled for him. But he also has a lot of stuff with mental health, with anxiety and depression. So we're pretty familiar with that too.
Me too. I have crippling panic attacks, and I shut down, and I'm not allowed to because of my intelligence.
Sure, and I understand how you, well, as best as I can understand how you feel, because I know that's common for people who are very intelligent. Our son is also very intelligent, very verbal, but he still struggles.
One moment, I gotta stop the dogs. Guys, you need to stop. Get out of the garbage can. Sorry about that. I have difficulties processing them and you guys at the same time.
Yeah, that's okay. Stop anytime you need to. So you have first of all, there's a couple things we want to figure out that are your priorities. One is to get SSI, right?
Yes, ma'am. I did have SSI, but I had some legal issues that they took it away from, and it was because I was being victimized for my autistic traits.
Okay, and when did you lose that?
Well, a friend of mine was killed. We had a falling out and weren't friends anymore, and there was a bunch of legal issues with that. And that was in 2017. In 2018, at the end of 2017, she got shot in the head. In 2018, the mental health people that I was working with, it was difficult to see them, and a lot of them were afraid to talk to me because at the time they thought that I'd killed her. So where they'd used to be able to give me rides to places, now they weren't able to give me rides, and they weren't able to do much, and it's still a very complicated situation. As a result, I was targeted by the public. I was targeted by her meth head buddies, and I was also targeted by the police, despite the fact that I was doing my best to try to find her. And before I go further, they found the guy who killed her. His name is Joseph Michael Lopez. He is serving 48 years in prison for the crime. So just to get that out of the way. But I was assaulted before they found that guy. I was assaulted repeatedly by the public. It was all over the news. I was assaulted by a police officer named Waylon Lolatai with a history of abusing inmates as well as abusing homeless people. and they charged me with assault against a police officer. And ever since then, even though they dropped the charges, the assault against a police officer is on my permanent record. So every police officer that I talk to treats me hostile unless I'm actually recording it. And then sometimes they treat me better. Um,
Sure.
but the thing is that they pushed me into repeated meltdowns, and I needed a safe environment. I needed a place. I'm sure you understand needing a place to process.
Sure. Sure. So if you lost your, so you lost your SSI because of legal issues, then?
Yes, ma'am. I literally ended up having to break the law because I didn't have an advocate to go in with me to talk to the police, and they kept on triggering me.
Okay.
And I didn't have an advocate to stop them from doing that, and I didn't have the ability to record those situations, so they were able to do whatever they wanted and say whatever they wanted. Ultimately, I ended up threatening to kill the president to try to force the FBI to take a look because the harassment, threats, and assaults happen across multiple jurisdictions. And so I was incarcerated, and I was bullied by the uh, jail staff and also by my public pretender who wouldn't do her job, into pleading guilty. And there's a bunch of slander that was allowed on my paperwork. At no point in time did I have adequate legal representation.
Okay. So we're trying to back up and figure out, what things that need to be done to try to get your SSI back, because that'll give you income potentially, which will then help your housing situation.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I've been trying to do that on my own for the last 2 years. See, for 7 months after I was assaulted by Whale and Lolatai, all of my money was spent going to and from court and places where I was being threatened, harassed, and assaulted, and had to fear the police. So when I finally broke the law, they incarcerated me for long enough that when I got out, I would have had to go through a bunch of hoops to try to get my disability back, and I was just too overwhelmed and too broke to be able to do that. Plus, all of the stuff that they expected me to jump through that there's no human way that I could have possibly ever done.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to think about the first steps that we need to take to try to talk to Social Security with you or for you, to figure out how to rectify that. So your therapist that was in Sydney, you said Nicole Peralta,
Yes, ma'am.
and so she did a diagnosis on you as an adult.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, that took a few months. At first, I was like, see, here's the thing: is that it's going to cost $4,000 for me to go to the Front Range and get a diagnosis. I need to actually get that diagnosis and find out, is it autism or is it PTSD? Because I grew up in the system enduring the kind of abuse that boys aren't supposed to talk about. And she said, well, I'm the person who's going to do that for you. And she did. And I had a caseworker at the time through Region 1. Her name was Tamara. I don't know her last name, but her son has autism, Asperger's. So after hearing my story, she was really good at her job. That was the last person who was actually able to do any advocacy for me. But she quit her job because of my story, and she decided to go spend her time with her son and try to get him prepared for this, so that if anything happens to her, he doesn't end up going through this.
Yeah. Okay, so Region 1 helped, and then so trying to kind of piece together the people that we might talk to if you decide you want us to help you with that, to try to get a team around you to kind of help get some things put back together.
That would be way better than what I've been doing, because I've literally been breaking the law to try to force people to take a look at what's going on. I mean, I am overwhelmed with this. I don't want to break the law. I don't want to be assaulted anymore. I don't want my life to be threatened anymore.
Right. You don't want to do that. And so, what are you doing in terms, or if you don't mind me asking, where are you able to stay while we try to find people to help?
I'm at a friend's house here in Chapel, Nebraska. He has some issues of his own that he's dealing with, so um it's complicated, but he can't really even afford the bills. So I mean, I don't even have a temporary income to try to cover that. But I'm on Thompson Street in Chapel, Nebraska.
Okay. And so, do you think, are you worried that you're not going to be able to stay there much longer because he can't afford the bills, or?
Well, there's that, but there's also the fact that I have meltdowns almost every day now. Um, just from the overwhelming nature of trying to get the police to listen. I mean, it's something where if I have a meltdown, I'm a bad guy, and I'm not a bad guy. I'm freaking out.
Mm-hmm. And so, um, yeah, we want to help you to stop doing things like breaking the law to get the attention, because that's going to eventually just hurt you more than
It's
help
hurt me a lot already.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I'm scared shitless. I mean, I've been through it a lot. I've been assaulted a lot over this, and I try to explain to people that it's not a choice. You can't drug autism out of me. You can't punish it out of me. You can't beat it out of me. It doesn't work that way.
Right. We do know, though, that you're absolutely right. But we do know that therapy and sometimes medications, not always, but there are approaches that are very positive too. It sounds like you've had, unfortunately, a lot of negative um, experiences with a lot of those things. But I can tell you, just so that you have hope, that sometimes there are excellent medications. There are really good therapists who can help not make it go away and not make you change, but they can help you live a more peaceful life and live with less meltdowns and less stress. You'll still have stress. I mean, that's part of life, but
Well,
there are ways and things to help make that better.
yes, ma'am. My stress is always environmental, so as a result, medications have never helped me. Um, they just zombify me, and then people are like, "Oh, well, he's doing better." And I'm like, "No, I feel sick. I'm a
Yeah.
zombie. I can't hardly think."
Yeah. And medications, when they're not the right ones, do make you feel that. When they're the right ones, you feel better. So it's definitely not worth taking something that makes you feel sick, that makes
Yes,
you
ma'am.
feel like you're not yourself. But that just happens to be a medication that isn't right for you.
But also, if I'm in the right environment, like I don't have meltdowns. I went
Yeah.
like 5 years without having a meltdown in Boulder, Colorado,
Mhm.
and that was because I was surrounding myself with positive people, and I kept myself busy with things that prevented me from dwelling on how crappy things really are.
Sure. And so, do you have you ever worked, or have you always had SSI in the last couple of years?
I always worked until I hurt my back. I also have Tourette syndrome, so I'm sure you're familiar with normalizing.
Sure.
I have to hide the fact that I'm autistic, and I have to hide the Tourette syndrome. So pretty much 24 hours a day, if I'm in public, I have to normalize, and I have to focus real heavily and intently, especially with the Tourette syndrome, so that people don't
That's
notice.
exhausting, I'm sure.
Yes, ma'am.
So, what did you do before you hurt your back?
I worked at a place called Stone Lighting in Louisville, Colorado.
What did you do for them?
I was the stock boy. I got the stuff out of the back shelves in the warehouse portion, and I brought it to the assembly floor.
Mm-hmm.
And
did you like that at all?
Oh, I loved it, but then I hurt my back, so I wasn't able to keep that job. And I did not hurt my back at work, so workman's comp was not a thing. And then there's also the fact that the paperwork part always overwhelms me. Like my
Yeah.
my housing paperwork that I went through, I had to have somebody help me with that. I'd actually applied for housing like 7 or 8 times before that, but I always had to go in by myself, and I always got overwhelmed with the paperwork and needed help with that. So it wasn't until someone actually went in with me in person that anything actually happened.
Yeah. So, is there any, you know of any kinds of housing things in Chapel?
Um,
Or,
we have low income here. We have the low income apartments, and then we have duplexes all over town. The duplexes are mostly for women with children, and the apartments, that's Hilltop, they're mostly for older people.
so is it, or does that mean you think there's not much for your age or your
Um,
situation?
there really isn't much, but also there is housing here. It's just a matter of getting in. Hilltop, that's where I lived before. If I could get the help in person doing that stuff, then I would be able to. I might possibly be able to get back in up there.
And it was low income housing at
Yes, ma'am.
Hilltop?
And because
Okay.
I don't have an income, it would be $50 a month. And when I got my disability money back, it would be $217 a month.
Okay. And then did you, when you had SSI, then that gave you Medicaid
Yes,
for
ma'am.
your insurance. And so that also then helps if you wanted to go to therapy. You wanted to kind of get back into that cycle of going to talk to somebody.
Yes, ma'am.
Uh,
Matter of fact, the lady that I was working with, Nicole Peralta, she's actually pretty good at her job, but she's not as familiar with autism, or not as familiar with my situation recently.
uh,
Just because I couldn't go see her, I didn't have the money to do so, and with all of the court stuff, I mean that really I was prevented from being able to go see the therapist. And then they said in court that I wasn't trying to get help. And I mean, literally, I've made hundreds of phone calls trying to get help. I wanted to go see Nicole Peralta all along, but with all the extra added stuff from the courts, I just couldn't afford it. And then they tried to court order me to go, and I'm like, there's no way. And that's when I started breaking the law. Is when those court orders. I'm like, you know what, you're wanting to squeeze blood out of a turnip, and we can't do that.
mhm. And so, um, so I'm kind of making a mental list. So there's Hilltop, which sounds like a promising thing if we can help get you there. But then the SSI, I'm not exactly sure why they would take that away from you because of a.
I was incarcerated over 30 days, and then
Okay.
I had multiple court dates across Colorado for the things that were done to me. When we get off the phone, there's a place called Clearview Behavioral Health. I'd like you to look them up. They're getting closed down because they killed a man doing what they had done to me. Also, I had to deal with Boulder Police Department as a homeless person, and they don't treat homeless people very well. So Officer Waylon Lolatai, I had to deal with him. And then two of the other officers that I had to deal with ended up killing a man as well while they were busy making fun of him. The police, for the most part, they make fun of me, and they assault me, and they pull a lot of little tricks just because, like, they didn't understand autism, and they also didn't understand the extreme amount of stress that I was under. And with me not being able to make a report about all the abuse that I was taking because of jurisdictional issues, I mean, it just very much became a giant hornet's nest.
And is this the Chapel Police?
But this happened in multiple states around the country, actually, because after Natalie was killed, I was assaulted by Waylon Lolatai about a week later. I'd been trying to make a report about the threats, assaults, and abuse for over a year, or well, almost a year before she died. And so after she died, and it was all over the news, people assumed that I had killed her. I had been accused of stalking her. I didn't have the money to go to court, and it was a very complicated situation already at that point, and I was overwhelmed. I was trying to get an advocate at that point, and I was also, because Tamara had quit her job, I needed to. I went to the Front Range of Colorado in specific to try to get resources for autism that they just don't have here, and also because I suffer from PTSD from growing up in the system.
When you say that in the system, does that mean in foster care?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. And so, but how are you with the Chapel Police? Are you struggling with them?
I am. I want to believe that it has a lot to do with them just not understanding, but also the jurisdictional thing is very much a barrier here. And then there's the fact that I've been trying to take them to court, which makes it an issue. But I'm hoping there's a woman here named Laura Nelson, and she's got a son who's autistic, and she was involved in a lot of the situations that I was in and is aware of a lot of the situations that happened, including Natalie's family threatening and harassing me. I'm hoping that she'll be able to explain to them in a manner will, I don't expect them to outright admit all of the fucked up things that they did, pardon my French, but I am hoping that they'll at least admit that they need more training in dealing with people who are autistic, because I went through a lot of abuse over that. But it was police here in Nebraska and in Colorado, and in Chesapeake, Virginia to begin with. After Natalie was killed, it's been a lot more places, and I've had to go to alcoholics and meth addicts for help, and that's a really scary situation for me because I'm sure you understand the whole volume situation. And I've been in places where it's a lot of screaming, and I try to explain to them, hey, I'm getting overwhelmed, I'm getting overloaded by your screaming, and they don't understand that it literally hurts me. That doesn't register to them.
And you went to them because you felt like that's the only people that you could go to for help?
They're the ones that offered.
Okay. So is there anybody else in Chapel that might help us with, I got several thoughts going through my head. One is, as the Autism Society in the last, 10 years or so, we've tried to do some police training. And we've tried to do some police training, and we've done that, in some parts of the state, but not that far out west. Both Mike and I grew up in North Platte, so we're kind of familiar with that, the western part of the state. But there's some information that we can definitely talk to them about and share training information for them that might help. So that's one thing.
I'm actually, because of growing up in the system and taking those classes, sorry, there's a train going by, it'll take a minute. I'm actually very well educated in all of the situations that they would need trained on as well. If you guys are able to get them that information to the Dual County Sheriff's Department, that would be a great help. I actually was advocating for people before Natalie died. I did homeless outreach in Boulder, Colorado for about 7 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you can, we can share this information with you too, but that's something we can definitely do, is share it with the Sheriff's Department, the Police Department, to try to get them some more information and get them access to more information. Some of the bigger police and sheriff's offices, they've even done some autism education in their roll call. So at the beginning of their day, they'll just like pick something and they'll kind of learn about it. Like what might happen if we approach somebody who's autistic? How might they act? Even if they're smart, we might not understand. If they're stressed out or that they're, overwhelmed or that they've got a lot of sensory problems. So we can definitely work on that.
A lot of times they ask multiple questions and they want an answer immediately, and at that point I have to process both the questions, and then it takes a minute for me to respond, and they're not used to that.
Sure. And those are some things that definitely could be a part of that training. So since you lost your SSI because of the incarceration, then have you, I wonder, we should probably call SSI and see how you can get it back. So that's one thing we'll work on, just kind of get the basic information of how you get that back so that we can start helping with the paperwork or that type of thing, because we want to get that back up and running. And then the Hilltop, do you know anybody there that we could call and just ask about paperwork and how that might work? If not, we can look it up
online. I don't have their number currently.
Okay, we can find it.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any transportation? Do you have a car? Or?
I don't. See, that's the thing, is that having to deal with alcoholics, and a lot of those environments were abusive. I had meltdowns over seeing other people being abused, and because of the situation with having assault against a police officer on my arrest record, despite the fact that they dropped the charges, the police officers have been very hostile in other places. And even though I was telling them that there's evidence of child abuse in my vehicle, they very much were treating me in a very hostile fashion, and they didn't care. I was living out of my vehicle, 2 different vehicles, and both of them were taken because of me literally breaking the law to try to force the cops to do their jobs.
So they impounded your cars?
In one case, yes, and in the other case, they refused to impound the vehicle. They just let the tow truck drivers take it. I actually recorded that interaction with the police. That was in Rawlins, Wyoming.
Okay. So you haven't had a car in Chapel there?
No, ma'am.
Okay. But Chapel's small enough, can you get around, like get to the grocery store?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so that's probably not. I'm just trying to make sure we stick with your big priority needs first,
yes,
and then kind of work our way down the list. So transportation probably isn't a big problem at the moment, anyway. Although I don't know how. Is there some sort of bus system or anything that you can get to Sydney? Or
there is a bus system. It's a handy bus that we have here. I don't have the number currently. I have a mountain of paperwork that it's all evidence, and it's somewhere in that mountain of paperwork. But I'm certain that I can look that up online.
Oh, we can find that. So there is a handy bus. And will that handy bus take you to Sydney? How far is Sydney?
Sydney is 27 miles.
Okay, so how would you get to Nicole?
I was driving. I haven't been able to see her since losing my vehicle and all of this has happened. So I've been trying to set up an appointment with her. Because of the whole sensory issue that I have, and the guy that I stay with during the day, he doesn't really have a full-time job. So during the day he is playing video games, and at night he has shows on that are, most of them are about killing and stuff like that, which really freaks me out. But it prevents me from sleeping. And then if I turn it off, that wakes him up, and the first thing he does is get onto the video games, and he has the headphones he puts on, and he starts talking to it, and it's overwhelming for me, so I don't sleep much.
Sure. Have you ever? Can you stand like earbuds or earplugs?
I have earbuds actually, but the thing is that it doesn't really drown out the stimuli, and also I can't sleep with them in my head.
Okay.
I don't know how to
Yeah,
explain
that's
that.
what I was wondering. Yeah, I can understand that. I was just wondering because we have researched them a lot because our son uses them a lot because he has sensory issues too. But
Yep.
we found some cheap ones, but if you can't sleep with them, then that doesn't really help.
But
Might help when you're awake, but
I sleep in a chair, and if I was able to have a bed to sleep in, like that might be different. It's just the fact that it it agitates my face when I'm laying down. It feels weird with the pillow and pushes into my ear, and it's pretty
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. So,
Sean, can you tell us a little bit more about Laura Nelson?
She has a store called Nettie's Treasures, and she has a son who's autistic. He doesn't speak. He actually he's able to look people in the eyes now because of me. I sat down with him one day and drew eyeballs with him. I used to be an artist once.
Wow.
And I'm actually really good with autistic people. I growing up in the system, you meet a lot of people and you learn how to deal with people with sensory issues. The
Yeah.
problem is educating others in those sensory issues, even especially when you have those sensory issues. So I connect with them really well because I understand them, whereas a lot of people don't. Laura, I've known for at least 15 years. She she's been through some trauma of her own, so she does understand trauma to a degree. Also, she's been involved with a lot of the situations that I've been in the last few years. That she might even be able to fill you in on those. Also, she might benefit from you guys. She was having a lot of the same issues with her son that I have, whereas her son was having about an issue a week, and so she was telling the people at the school what his triggers are, and then he was having an issue every day, which means that instead of understanding those triggers and trying to do something about it, they were intentionally pushing those triggers. Um, so she's had a bit of issues with that as well. She owns a store here. She lost a daughter and a few other family members in a fire right outside of Chapel here, and she's got some trauma that she deals with because of that. So she's got that going on. She's also a business owner of an antique store and basically a knickknack store here. So she is her own boss, so she would be able to speak with you. She just got a new phone, so I don't have her new number. But with your permission, I could give yours to her.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right.
And you have my mobile number. Is it okay if you've got this is my Mike's, and then Megan's is 402.
One moment. One moment. One moment. Let me get something right. Oh my God, my back. I got degenerative disc disease, and I hurt my back a few years ago, so I'm not exactly mobile. Let me find a pencil to write this down. I have a lot of issues. All right. If I'm having problems finding a pencil, and if you tell me, I won't remember.
No, I understand that one. Okay. And so, kind of switching gears again. It's been a couple of years since you've seen Nicole.
Well, it's been over a year. Um, I've been from one end of the country to the other, trying to get help. There's a lot of people that I went to go see that, like one lady in California, she's got a daughter who's autistic, but she's also an alcoholic, and it doesn't register to her that her daughter's meltdowns are, and she's immodal. I'm sure you know what that means. Um, so she can't explain to her mom that it's her mom's volume level that is sending her into meltdowns. And as a result, while I was there, there was a lot of issues with that. She's a really nice lady, though. Her name is Shannon Alvarado. Um, and just there's a lot of people in my life that never understood it, never made the time to understand it, and actually used autism against me. One of them being my dad. When he was learning about autism, he found out about the freeze loop. And as soon as he found out about that, then everything that he's ever done wrong is magically my fault because of the freeze loop. And he just like pushes that and pushes that and pushes that. And I'm like, no, it's an understanding thing, Dad. You need to stop and listen.
Say what that word is again? What'd you call it?
The freeze loop.
What's that?
Basically, it's where we get overwhelmed and we're trying to explain something, and when we get interrupted, we have to start over again. When you get stuck on something that's traumatic, especially, like you get stuck in that loop until you have a meltdown.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you know? Well, I guess now we need to commonly ask you, if we make calls, would you rather at this point we just call like Hilltop House and those places and just ask general questions, not using your name? Or do you want us to ask using your name?
You have my permission to use my name.
Okay. So we'll start with trying to figure out the Hilltop House, and also we're going to research some stuff about SSI and how that works when you've lost it, how you get it back. Because when did SSI start for you? I guess when did you first get it?
I first started getting it in early 2017. That was one of the biggest issues between me and my dad, is that in his mind, I should have been on disability as soon as I turned 18. But the problem is that without a representative or an advocate and being homeless, it was just impossible to do that. Also, at that point in time, I was supposed to be diagnosed when I was younger, and we decided not to do that and to wait until I was 18 to do that. So that because I would have had to be re-diagnosed at 18 anyway. And at 18, I just didn't have the resources. So I went undiagnosed for a lot of years.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if it's okay with you, then we'll start making some calls and looking into the SSI and the Hilltop House, and then.
Is it okay if we talk to Region 1 too and see if there's somebody there that can help? I know we won't be able to replace Tamara probably, but I mean with that level of understanding, but maybe they've got somebody else that can help in other ways.
There's a lady named Jen Beebe. She was pretty new when I first started working with her, and she could really use some of that training materials too. We had a lot of issues with her not understanding, especially the whole suicide thing that is actually pretty common with us. She's not familiar with that, and the police aren't familiar with that, and that was used on multiple occasions to prevent me from saying what it is that I needed to say and explaining it. That's a lot of the reason for needing an advocate.
Yeah.
The thing is, I do want to live. My life has been torture, and it hurts, and I've lost everybody that I care about, and it's due to them not understanding, and also, there's a lot of stuff that I don't understand.
Sure.
And especially when it comes to legal issues. I was overwhelmed and I shut down real easy now. It didn't used to be that way. But with all of the targeting that I've had to deal with, it's not easy. Jen, she hasn't gotten back to me in a couple of weeks. I'll have to be able to go there and fill out paperwork in order to get this all started again. But the problem is,
Where is she?
she's out of Scotts Bluff, but she works with Region 1 Nebraska, and she can go as far as Sydney. And Tamara actually came as far as Chapel, so she might be able to do that. But also with the whole situation with Natalie and everything that's happened since then, and all the meltdowns that I've had, she might not feel comfortable picking me up, which um, I can understand that. I think that if she was a little bit better educated on the situation, that she would be more comfortable with it. But that'll take some doing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, and it doesn't. People don't pick it up instantly either.
They don't, and that was a lot of the issues that we were having. Is that I was overwhelmed with all of my court dates, all of the travel that I had to do, and the fact that she only had an hour a week to work with me, and that made it really complicated because we had a lot of stuff that we needed to get done and a lot of stuff to cover, and it was just going into her office there. I was doing my best not to have a meltdown, so it's by the time she entered the scenario, it was already at a boiling point, and it's something that she I mean, fuck, that's definitely not something she should have been thrown into the way that she was. I can say that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, if it's okay with you, then we'll kind of get started on just making some calls and figuring some stuff out, and then trying to give you a call back to kind of let you know where we're at. You know, what information we can get for you.
See, that's something most people don't understand. They keep giving me phone numbers, and I call those phone numbers, and they don't go anywhere. So I'm glad you guys understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. So just let us, let us do some of that running around and calling and figuring things out, and then kind of getting back to you, because that's what we don't want to do. We don't want to just kind of tell you to go do these things and then not help you.
If you could do that stuff on your own, you'd do it. You know,
exactly.
Because you're definitely a very intelligent guy. It's just these other things that kind of get in the way. So we'll do what we can.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
So, is there a good time to? Is it okay to just call you when we? Probably might take a day or two, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, to call you back and.
Yeah, that'll work. I'm supposed to go talk to the police on Tuesday, but I'm gonna postpone that because working with you guys is a little more important, and it's also real scary going in and talking to them alone.
Yeah.
Why do you need to go talk to them?
There's a lot of legal issues that I've had recently, and I needed to get some stuff started, but the stuff that I needed to go talk to them about was that I need an autism advocate to sit with me to help explain them things so that they understand instead of running and jumping with their conclusions and assumptions, because I'm not some violent criminal. I'm somebody who's under extreme amount of stress, and sensory overload issues are definitely a lot more amplified under that stress.
Right. Can you tell me about Deputy Bo Fisher, the guy that contacted us?
I spoke with him yesterday. I've only had a couple of interactions with him, and he's been nothing but genuinely to me. He was not here when I was having a lot of issues with the Chapel Police Department, and he seems to be he was very, very much. He didn't trip my trigger, I guess is the way to say it. He listened to me pretty all right. He said that he would make some calls, and obviously he did. I've tried calling the Autism Society of Nebraska and also in South Dakota and in Colorado and in Washington State. And because of the issues that I've been having, like a lot of those places just never called me back. There's also CCDC, Colorado Cross Disability Coalition, and they actually wanted me to advocate, but I can't go to Colorado because of warrants. And I do need to get those taken care of, but I need someone to advocate for me in those instead of being railroaded by the system again.
Yeah, and so I wonder, that helps us to know too when we're talking Social Security, how to manage all that.
Is it okay if we kind of talk to Deputy Bo? Kind of keep him in the loop too. Is that okay?
You absolutely may. Matter of fact, the sheriff there here in Chapel, I've had a lot of issues with him, but I feel that he would benefit from any of that information as well and might be able to help better train his officers here. You definitely have my permission to talk to Bo. There's also Laura Nelson. You have my permission to talk to her. Literally anybody that you need to talk to, you have my permission to talk to. Any releases of information that you might need, just tell them to have the releases of information there, and I'll make sure that I sign them for any of those people that you need to talk to.
Okay. Well, we'll get to work on this, and hopefully some things will kind of start to level out, and you're on a better path to the more happier days.
Well, now that I have some people who understand the advocacy part of it, and obviously from listening to you, you're not alcoholics.
Yeah.
I mean, we're in Nebraska. Pretty much everybody drinks, but I don't. But I also don't do drugs. I stay away from all of that stuff. A lot of the issue that I have with pills is that I grew up on them and I have adverse reactions to them. Some of them will actually make me violent, so it's important to stay away from that as much as possible and not test them on me. If so, it needs to be in a controlled environment as far as the stimuli goes, because if the medications have an adverse reaction, then those stimuli could be amplified. And that can run into a very explosive situation very quickly.
Yeah. Sean, do you have an email address?
I do. It's doggedroman@gmail.com.
D like David, OGGED, Roman?
Yep. Education diploma, and Roman as in somebody from Rome.
All right. doggedroman@gmail.com. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I'll send you an email so you have mine as well. And then I'll text you Meg's number here in just a second.
All right.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing so much with us. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mike. I'm real terrible with names and numbers, especially when I'm stressed out. So I'm going to try to use your name when we talk to each other so that I'll remember it.
I appreciate that. I stink at names as well. I have to talk to people about 37 times. Unless there's some emotional attachment to it,
Yep.
I won't remember. Yeah.
Same thing here.
All right. Well, again, thanks for talking to us and sharing yourself with us. We'll be back in touch.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Will do.
Bye-bye.
Bye. shit, it's down to 1%.